What is Lockout Tagout? Lockout Tagout refers to specific practices and procedures to safeguard employees from the unexpected energization or startup of machinery and equipment or the release of hazardous energy during service or maintenance activities. This requires, in part, that a designated individual turns off and disconnects the machinery or equipment from its energy source before performing service or maintenance, and that the authorized employees either lock or tag the energy isolating device to prevent the release of hazardous energy and take steps to verify that the energy has been isolated effectively. If the potential exists for the release of hazardous stored energy or for the reaccumulation of stored energy to a hazardous level, the employer must ensure that the employee takes steps to prevent injury that may result from the release of the stored energy. Lockout devices hold energy isolation devices in a safe or off position. They provide protection by preventing machines or equipment from becoming energized because they are positive restraints that no one can remove without a key or other unlocking mechanism or through extraordinary means, such as bolt cutters. Tagout devices, by contrast, are prominent warning devices that an authorized employee fastens to energy isolating devices to warn employees not to re-energize the machine while he or she services or maintains it. Tagout devices are easier to remove and, by themselves, provide employees with less protection than do lockout devices. Why do I need to be concerned about Lockout Tagout? Employees can be seriously or fatally injured if machinery they service or maintain unexpectedly energizes, starts up, or releases stored energy. OSHA's standard on the control of hazardous energy, Lockout Tagout, spells out the steps employers must take to prevent accidents associated with hazardous energy. The standard addresses practices and procedures necessary to disable machinery and prevent the release of potentially hazardous energy while maintenance or servicing activities are performed. How do I know if the OSHA standard applies to me? If your employees service or maintain machines where the unexpected startup, energization, or the release of stored energy could cause injury, the standard likely applies to you. The standard applies to all sources of energy, including, but not limited to, mechanical, electrical, hydraulic, pneumatic, chemical, and thermal energy. How does the standard apply to general industry service and maintenance operations? The standard applies to the control of hazardous energy when employees are involved in service or maintenance activities, such as constructing, installing, setting up, adjusting, inspecting, modifying, and maintaining or servicing machines or equipment. These activities include lubricating, cleaning or unjamming machines, and making adjustments or tool changes where the employees may be exposed to hazardous energy. What are OSHA's requirements? OSHA standard establishes minimum performance requirements for controlling hazardous energy. The standard specifies that employers must establish an energy control program to ensure that employees isolate machines from their energy sources and to render them inoperative before any employee services or maintains them. As part of an energy control program, employers must establish energy control procedures for removing the energy supply from machines and for putting appropriate lockout or tagout devices on the energy isolating devices to prevent unexpected re-energization. When appropriate, the procedure also must address stored or potentially reaccumulated energy. Train employees on the energy control program, including the safe application, use, and removal of energy controls, and inspect these procedures periodically, at least annually, to ensure that they are being followed and that they remain effective in preventing employee exposure to hazardous energy. If employers use tagout devices on machinery that can be locked out, they must adopt additional measures to provide the same level of employee protection that lockout devices would provide. Within the broad boundaries of the standard, employers have the flexibility to develop programs and procedures that meet the needs of their individual workplaces and the particular types of machines being maintained or serviced. What must an energy control procedure include? Employers must develop, document, and use procedures to control potentially hazardous energy. The procedures explain what employees must know and do to control hazardous energy effectively when they service or maintain machinery. If this information is the same for the various machines used at a workplace, then a single energy control procedure may suffice. Employers must develop separate energy control procedures if their workplaces have more variable conditions, such as multiple energy sources, different power connections, or different control sequences that workers must follow to shut down various pieces of machinery. The energy control procedures must outline the scope, purpose, authorization, rules, and techniques that employees will use to control hazardous energy sources, as well as the means that will be used to enforce compliance. These procedures must provide employees at least the following information: a statement on how to use the procedures, specific procedural steps to shut down, isolate, block, and secure machines, specific steps designating the safe placement, removal, and transfer of lockout tagout devices, and identifying who has responsibility for the lockout tagout devices, and specific requirements for testing machines to determine and verify the effectiveness of lockout devices, tagout devices, and other energy control measures. What must workers do before they begin service or maintenance activities? Before beginning service or maintenance, the following steps must be accomplished in sequence and according to the specific provisions of the employer's energy control procedure. Prepare for shutdown. Shut down the machine. Disconnect or isolate the machine from the energy source. Apply the lockout or tagout device to the energy isolating device. Release, restrain, or otherwise render safe all potential hazardous stored or residual energy. If a possibility exists for reaccumulation of hazardous energy, regularly verify during the service and maintenance that such energy has not reaccumulated to hazardous levels, and verify the isolation and de-energization of the machine. What must workers do before they remove their lockout or tagout device and re-energize the machine? Employees who work on de-energized machinery may be seriously injured or killed if someone removes the lockout tagout devices and re-energizes machinery without their knowledge. Thus, it is extremely important that all employees respect lockout and tagout devices, and that only the person or persons who applied these devices remove them. Before removing lockout or tagout devices, the employees must take the following steps in accordance with the specific provisions of the employer's energy control procedure. Inspect machines or their components to assure that they are operationally intact and that non-essential items are removed from the area, and check to assure that everyone is positioned safely and away from machines. After removing the lockout or tagout devices, but before re-energizing the machine, the employer must assure that all employees who operate or work with the machine, as well as those in the area where service or maintenance is performed, know that the devices have been removed and that the machine is capable of being re-energized. In the rare situation in which the employee who placed the lockout tagout device is unable to remove that device, another person may remove it under the direction of the employer, provided that the employer strictly adheres to the specific procedures outlined in the standard. When do I use lockout and how do I do it? You must use a lockout program or tagout program that provides a level of protection equal to that achieved through lockout whenever your employees engage in service or maintenance operations on machines that are capable of being locked out and that expose them to hazardous energy from unexpected energization, startup, or release of stored energy. How can I determine if the energy isolating device can be locked out? An energy isolating device is considered capable of being locked out if it meets one of the following requirements: is designed with a hasp or other part to which you can attach a lock, such as a lockable electric disconnect switch, has a locking mechanism built into it, or can be locked without dismantling, rebuilding, or replacing the energy isolating device, or permanently altering its energy control capability, such as a lockable valve cover or circuit breaker blockout. What do I do if I cannot lock out the equipment? Sometimes it is not possible to lock out the energy isolating device associated with the machinery. In that case, you must securely fasten a tagout device as close as safely possible to the energy isolating device in a position where it will be immediately obvious to anyone attempting to operate the device. You also must meet all of the tagout provisions of the standard. The tag alerts employees to the hazard of re-energization and states that employees may not operate the machinery to which it is attached until the tag is removed in accordance with an established procedure. What other options do I have? If it is possible to lock out an energy isolating device, employers must use lockout devices unless they develop, document, and use a tagout procedure that provides employees with a level of protection equal to that provided by a lockout device. In a tagout program, an employer can attain an equal level of protection by complying with all tagout-related provisions of the standard and using at least one added safety measure that prevents unexpected re-energization. Such measures might include removing an isolating circuit element, blocking a controlling switch, opening an extra disconnecting device, or removing a valve handle to minimize the possibility that machines might inadvertently be re-energized while employees perform service and maintenance activities. When can tagout devices be used instead of lockout devices? Tagout devices may be used on energy isolating devices that are capable of being locked out if the employer develops and implements the tagout in a way that provides employees with a level of protection equal to that achieved through a lockout system. When using a tagout system, the employer must comply with all tagout-related provisions of the standard and train employees in the limitations of tags, in addition to providing normal hazardous energy control training for all employees. What are the limitations of tagout devices? A tagout device is a prominent warning that clearly states that the machinery being controlled must not be operated until the tag is removed in accordance with an established procedure. Tags are essentially warning devices and do not provide the physical restraint of a lock. Tags may evoke a false sense of security. For these reasons, OSHA considers lockout devices to be more secure and more effective than tagout devices in protecting employees from hazardous energy. What are the requirements for lockout tagout devices? Whether lockout or tagout devices are used, they must be the only devices the employer uses in conjunction with energy isolating devices to control hazardous energy. The employer must provide these devices, and they must be singularly identified and not used for other purposes. In addition, they must have the following characteristics: durable enough to withstand workplace conditions. Tagout devices must not deteriorate or become illegible even when used with corrosive components, such as acid or alkali chemicals, or in wet environments. Standardized according to color, shape, or size. Tagout devices also must be standardized according to print and format. Tags must be legible and understandable by all employees. They must warn employees about the hazards if machine is energized and offer employees clear instruction such as do not start, do not open, do not close, do not energize, or do not operate. Substantial enough to minimize the likelihood of premature or accidental removal. Tags must be attachable by hand, and the device for attaching the tag should be a one-piece nylon cable tie or its equivalent so it can withstand all environments and conditions. Labeled to identify the specific employees authorized to apply and remove them. What do employees need to know about lockout tagout programs? Training must ensure that employees understand the purpose, function, and restrictions of the energy control program. Employers must provide training specific to the needs of authorized, affected, and other employees. Authorized employees are those responsible for implementing the energy control procedures or performing the service or maintenance activities. They need the knowledge and skills necessary for the safe application, use, and removal of energy isolating devices. They also need training in the following: hazardous energy source recognition, the type and magnitude of the hazardous energy sources in the workplace, and energy control procedures, including the methods and means to isolate and control those energy sources. Affected employees, usually machine operators or users, are employees who operate the relevant machinery or whose jobs require them to be in the area where service or maintenance is performed. These employees do not service or maintain machinery or perform lockout tagout activities. Affected employees must receive training in the purpose and use of energy control procedures. They also need to be able to do the following: recognize when the energy control procedure is being used, understand the purpose of the procedure, and understand the importance of not tampering with lockout or tagout devices and not starting or using equipment that has been locked or tagged out. All other employees whose work operations are or may be in an area where energy control procedures are used must receive instruction regarding the energy control procedure and the prohibition against removing a lockout or tagout device and attempting to restart, re-energize, or operate the machinery. When is training necessary? The employer must provide initial training before starting service and maintenance activities and must provide retraining as necessary. In addition, the employer must certify that the training has been given to all employees covered by the standard. Employers must provide retraining for all authorized and affected employees whenever there is a change in the following: job assignments, machinery or processes that present a new hazard, or energy control procedures. Retraining also is necessary whenever a periodic inspection reveals, or an employer has reason to believe, that shortcomings exist in an employee's knowledge or use of the energy control procedure. What if I need power to test or position machines, equipment, or components? OSHA allows the temporary removal of lockout or tagout devices and the re-energization of the machine only in limited situations for particular tasks that require energization. For example, when power is needed to test or position machines, equipment, or components. However, this temporary exception applies only for the limited time required to perform the particular task requiring energization. Employers must provide effective protection from hazardous energy when employees perform these operations. The following steps must be performed in sequence before re-energization. Clear tools and materials from machines. Clear employees from the area around the machines. Remove the lockout or tagout devices as specified in the standard. Energize the machine and proceed with testing or positioning. De-energize all systems. Isolate the machine from the energy source and reapply energy control measures if additional service or maintenance is required. The employer must develop, document, and use energy control procedures that establish a sequence of actions to follow whenever re-energization is required as part of a service or maintenance activity, since employees may be exposed to significant risks during these transition periods. How often do I need to review my lockout tagout procedures? Employees are required to review their procedures at least once a year to ensure that they provide adequate worker protection.